Today, we're going to recap a horror/thriller film called Fresh. The movie starts with Noah, who is currently on a date with Chad. Noah met Chad on a dating app and decided to give him a chance. Although the initial impressions are quite bad, she's hopeful it'll go well. Chad, who asked her out, reminded her to bring her own money for the date. Unfortunately, as she expected, Chad turns out to be the opposite of what she's looking for. During their date, he keeps talking about himself, coming up with misogynistic comments, and implies Noah's not dressed appropriately. At the end of the date, Chad insists they have another meet-up, but Noah politely refuses. The rejection doesn't sit well for Chad, who insults Noah just before walking away. The next day, Noah goes to her gym boxing class and opens up to her best friend, Molly. She says how awful it all went and laments being alone. Molly then reassures her that she doesn't need a man. Although the statement comforts her, Noah continues swiping through dating apps when she gets home. But still, all men she sees and talks to disappoint her. When she goes to the grocery store, she encounters Steve, who starts talking to her about cotton candy grapes. However, this was just Steve's terrible attempt at flirting with her. After some small talk, Noah ends up agreeing to giving him her number. The next day, Noah runs into Molly again and talks about the chance encounter, stating that she finds Steve attractive. Because of all the good stuff Noah said about him, Molly jokes that Steve is probably married. Noah then gets worried that Steve still hasn't texted her. On her way home, she gets what she wants as Steve invites her on a night out at a bar. They start getting to know each other while having some drinks, and Noah learns that Steve is a plastic surgeon. The date goes super well and they end up spending the night together. The next day, Noah calls Molly and shares all the details about the previous night. Seeing how excited Noah is, Molly gets curious and decides to stalk Steve on the internet. That's when Noah notes he doesn't have a single social media account. In turn, Molly tells her that's a bright red flag. In spite of that, Noah finds Steve too enthralling to take the statement seriously. Before they end the call, Noah mentions that she recognized their bartender from that night, a guy Molly used to hook up with. Later that night, Noah and Steve see each other again. This time, they go to Noah's apartment and just chill. While they're eating takeout food, Noah learns that Steve doesn't eat animals. The night ends fantastically again, to the point that when Steve invites her to a surprise weekend trip, she immediately gets on board. When she calls Molly to let her know about the new plans, her best friend gets worried because she doesn't even know the location. Still, Noah seems very into Steve, so Molly doesn't overthink it and just tells her friend to be careful. The weekend finally arrives and Steve picks up Noah. He tells her that they'll stay at his place before driving early the next day. As they get to his place, Noah is immediately impressed with his home. In her amazement, she misses the fact that the house is in the middle of nowhere. While looking around, Noah notices there's no cell signal and Steve tells her that his Wi-Fi must have gone out. As they chat, Steve gives her a drink he mixed, which she drinks right away. Steve keeps talking about their weekend trip, but Noah starts feeling woozy. Although she tries to fight the dizziness, she passes out in a matter of minutes. When she wakes up, she finds herself in a different room with Steve sitting away from her. She asks what happened, so Steve immediately admits to drugging her. At first she believes he's just joking. However, when she tries to stand up, she sees her hands chained to the floor. She tries pleading for Steve to take the handcuffs off, but he says he can't do it. Noah eventually starts freaking out while Steve tries to say something to her. He shouts to make her listen. It turns out Steve sells human meat in a black market and intends to sell Noah's. Steve explains that he sells the meat fresh, so he intends to keep her alive for as long as possible. When Steve leaves the room, she starts screaming for help and hears someone answer in another room. She starts pleading for help, but the other girl, Penny, tells her that they're in the same boat. Because she's been there longer, Penny has lost track of time and tells Noah that she's slowly being eaten away by Steve's customers. Elsewhere, Molly starts feeling off about Noah's condition. Even though Steve has been replying to her texts through Noah's phone, she starts feeling quite suspicious with the conversation. When she couldn't find anything on Steve's vague background, she reverse searches the image that Steve sent from Noah's phone. Much to her alarm, Molly stumbles upon the image on Google, finding out that it's not a picture Noah took. Meanwhile, Steve tries to get Noah to eat, but she won't touch her food. Although he still tries to treat her warmly, the circumstances don't exactly help. Noah asks to shower, so Steve reluctantly walks her to the bathroom. However, as soon as they start walking in the hallway, Noah tries to escape. Angered, Steve knocks her unconscious. When Noah wakes up, she finds herself on an operating table. Steve tells her that it's her punishment for not behaving. Finally experiencing the whole of Steve's cruelty, Noah gets her entire but taken for him to sell. Far from there, Molly goes to see Paul, the bartender who served Noah and Steve on their first date. She asks for Steve's ID and basic information, but Paul can't share it since he might get fired. Molly leaves but hopes that Paul will change his mind. Back in Noah's cell, she keeps confiding in Penny about Steve. They find comfort in each other, so Noah admits that she slept with Steve. This surprises Penny because she hasn't heard of any other victim who slept with him. At night, Molly is still at work when she receives a text from Paul, finally giving in to her request. After finding Steve's full name, she immediately searches for him on Facebook. Although she doesn't find him, she does find in Steve's wife. It turns out he's indeed married and has 2 kids. The next day, Molly goes straight to their address to look for Noah. Before getting there, she decides to share her location with Paul, just in case things go south. Meanwhile, Noah has been given magazines to entertain her. Although Steve visits her from time to time, she ignores him completely. Since Penny's remark was bugging her mind, Noah decides to ask Steve why did he sleep with her. He admits that he likes Noah but tells her that it was a mistake. As Steve leaves, Noah notices a note in the magazine. A previous victim left encouraging words between some of the pages, saying, "If you're reading this, it means he likes you. Use it." Noah takes the advice and starts treating Steve differently. She even asks what human meat tastes like. Steve gives her a sincere answer, yet inquisitive about why Noah would ask such a question. Elsewhere, Molly confronts Steve's wife, about Noah's situation. Although they sit down to talk about it, his wife seems innocent regarding the whole situation. She seems to believe that her husband is not capable of cheating on her. Coincidentally, Steve arrives home and sees Anne and Molly together, but he keeps his cool. As they send her away, Molly smartly calls Noah's phone. The phone rings among Steve's clothes and she learns that he is indeed guilty. As Steve says she shouldn't have done that and knocks her out from behind. Back in the cell, Steve goes to Noah and asks why she was curious about the human meat. Despite thinking it was odd, he invites her for dinner and even gives her a change of clothes. Back at his own home, Steve tells his wife that he'll be busy the next night due to work stuff. He compliments Anne for acting quickly. Steve asks about their children and gives Anne a quick kiss before departing. As she's about to take a shower, she takes off her clothes and reveals a prosthetic leg. It's dinner time and Steve cooks something special for Noah, human meat. They have some wine and talk as he cooks. Noah asks about Steve's background, inquiring how he got into such an occupation. Steve then tells the story of his discovery, saying that he once had the opportunity to try it and became addicted to the taste. Afterwards, he found people with the same odd taste, so he decided to make a name for himself by delivering products to those willing to pay for them. For their meal, Steve places a meatball pasta in front of her. Despite being disgusted, Noah forces herself to try it. As she chews it carefully, Noah doesn't act repulsed and swallows it down, even saying that the taste is indescribable. After Steve walks her back to her room, he goes to Molly's cell and proceeds to do surgery on her as well. In the meantime, Paul has finally started to feel that something is wrong and plans to follow the location Molly sent him. It seems that Noah's plan to gain Steve's confidence is working because he comes back the following night with a gift. He gives her a lovely dress and asks her for dinner once again, which Noah agrees to. The two dress up before having a romantic candlelit dinner, again with human meat on the menu. After the first course, Steve shows her a hidden shelf behind a painting where he hides all his victims' possessions and IDs. Noah looks around and sees a picture of Penny. She also notices that her stuff isn't amongst the shelves, so Steve tells her that it's still with him. When she focuses on the cell phones in there, she sees Molly's phone and gets a terrible feeling. As they savor the final course of the meal, Noah starts crying. She claims to feel very guilty, as she doesn't feel horrible after eating human meat. This brings down Steve's walls, as he tries to comfort her. Right after they kiss, Steve realizes he had forgotten to handcuff her. Noah then invites him to dance and they move to the living room. With the sweet ambience of their date, they end up going to bed together. But beforehand, Noah goes to the bathroom for a bit. When she returns, Noah approaches him and starts giving him head. However, she suddenly bites off his groin instead. Steve screams in an enormous deal of pain, giving Noah the chance to wipe toothpaste on his eyes. She manages to steal his keys and uncuff herself before locking Steve inside his own room. Noah runs for her life and goes straight to Molly, who happens to be chained and gagged. She sets Molly free before coming for Penny, who's missing a leg. With Steve on their tail, the three try to escape while assisting Penny. Steve finds a way around and eventually gets to the kitchen. However, the three women ambush him there, attacking together to save themselves. Even though it's a 3 versus 1 situation, Steve is doing well and beats them around. When he tries to pin down Noah, Penny crawls towards them and stabs him on the leg. Eventually, Molly manages to knock Steve out with a kick on the face. Before running away for good, Noah makes sure to get their cell phones back. As the three get outside, they find it very difficult to advance due to Penny's missing leg. This gives time for Steve to recover and chase them, now armed with a gun. Meanwhile, Paul has just arrived at Steve's address, but he clearly sees something's wrong with the situation. When he hears a gunshot, he immediately gets back to his car and drives away. Moments later, Anne arrives after failing to get in touch with Steve. After she sees all the blood traces from the kitchen fight and hears some of Steve's gunshots, the wife goes outside to look for him. Steve continues looking for Noah and eventually sees her hiding among some trees after her phone lights up. Molly notices her friend is in big trouble and doesn't hesitate to tackle Steve to the ground to save Noah. With Steve down on the ground, they gang up on him until Noah shoots him in the head with his own gun. They try to run to safety, barely missing Anne, who finally comes across Steve's body. However, Noah returns to the woods alone to look for her phone, leaving Penny to Molly's care. Unfortunately, this time, Anne sees her. She pretends to be one of Steve's victims, but Noah does not fall for her tricks. Still, she pins Noah down and starts choking her. As she's about to pass out, Noah manages to grab Steve's keys and stabs Anne in the neck with them. Since the keys don't go deep in her neck, Steve's wife is still standing and even slams Noah against a tree. That's when Molly comes to Noah's aid with a shovel, viciously smashing Anne's head repeatedly. The movie ends as the two catch their breath against a tree and Noah receives a text from Chad asking if she's awake. Thanks for watching. If you like our content, please like the video and don't forget to subscribe.